Hello, hope all is well. I thought I'd just do a really quick video on how to set up your FM3 to be like a standalone looper device. Now by standalone, I mean that we're only using the FM3 like we would say use a Ditto looper, a Boss RC-2 or something like that. Yes, it's maybe overkill to use a device like that, but maybe there's some recordings you have to do or certain things that you want to set up, and then you can use your FM3 to do something like this quite easily. So to do this, it's really simple. There is a bit of housekeeping to do beforehand. So on the FM3, we're going to be using output 2. So we're going to be using one of the line outs on the back of the unit, which I'll show here. And so before we start within FM3 edit, we'll go to setup and then down to audio. And then we make sure that output 2 is set to unity gain, 0 dB boost pad, normal phase, and we can leave it in stereo mode. And so once you've set this up, we can now max out the output 2 volume on the FM3. So that will be the unity gain essentially. So basically the same level of the guitar that's going in, it will be exactly the same going out of the unit as well. And now to set up the actual, preset itself, we'll go to quick build. We'll put an in, say here in the middle, an output here. We'll link the two together and we'll check to see if we've got sound. And then all we have to do is put a looper block right here in the middle. And then in the looper block, there's one thing I'd perhaps change from the offset, and that's in the second page, config. And basically on your record second press, what that means is that after you start looping, when you press the record button again, it will immediately start to overdub. And depending on how you like to use a looper, you can do that, of course, but I prefer to set it to play, for example, so that when you press record for the second time after you've played your loop, it will just start playing the loop and keep looping it. And then setting it again will mean that you record over it. And next to that, if you want, you can actually set loop quantize on if you want to set a tap tempo and be really specific with the sort of riffs that you're playing. But in the case of just a simple looper where you won't have this sort of thing, I'd suggest to leave this off, and that way it's just going to basically react to when you start looping and when you stop looping, and it's going to stick to that tempo. We can leave max loop time here to maximum, leave crossfade to off. And then for these settings, you can adjust to taste depending on how you're using kind of a looper setup. In the case of, say, this example where we'll be, say, using the looper to, say, run through an amp or something like that, I'd suggest just leaving all of these at max, i.e. 0 dB. And now to set up the foot switches to make things really easy, we go to FC Edit over here, and we'll see over here that we have different layouts that we can select. So if you already have a few layouts that you use, go to a layout that you don't use or you want to set up. I'd suggest maybe one of the others, so like 2, 3, 4 or something like that. I already set this one up, but we'll set one up from scratch. So I'll go to layout 4, which is empty here. I'll rename this to, say, looper. And then we can use the 3 switches to control the looper. So on this first switch, I want it to control the looper. Function record, yep. On the second switch, I also want it to control the looper. And we'll set this to play stop. And then on the third switch, we'll also set this to looper, and we can set this to undo erase. If you want to maximize the use of the switches, you can also set hold functions as well. But I think for the ease of use, we'll just look at using like the 3 switches as is for now, as these are the kind of basic functions that you would use with a looper. Now with all that done, just have to save the preset. I'll save this under PB Easy Looper. Now, while I could put this preset in my usual downloads, I think given the other things that you have to kind of do to set up, I think it's best if you set it up yourself, as it's really small and compact and easy to do. And that way you kind of know what's going on as well. And particularly with the output options, the unity gain setting on the output 2, that's an important one to do. So there we go. We've got the preset set up, the foot switches set up as they should. So I'll give that a go.
So once everything's set up, I'm not sure if this is the best kind of angle, but basically we'll have our 3 foot switches here. The first one will be for record, the second one for play stop, and the last one for erase and undo. Now one thing here is that when you're recording a loop, when you hit record, it will start recording the loop itself. And when you hit record again, the looper will just keep looping what you're doing. And then when you hit stop, self-explanatory, it will stop. You can also hit record, and then when you want it to start looping, hit play. But I find it easier based on like other loopers I've used, just to use that first foot switch to like hit record. When you hit record again, it starts playing that initial loop. And then when you hit record again, you can start to do overdubs. So one thing to note when you're doing, say, overdubs, and you've just made, say, an initial loop. So we've got a loop going. You can't hear anything because I'm not looping anything, but it's just to show what's going on. When you hit record again, it will start recording whatever you're doing as an overdub. And to stop recording, you then hit the play button. You don't hit the record button again. And that's just something, or at least that's how this looper works. And to stop the loop, you can hit stop, that's self-explanatory. And a cool feature is the third switch, that is the undo erase. So when you hit undo, it will undo the last layer of loop that you've just recorded, such as this. And when you press stop, it will then be used to completely erase the loop that you've recorded. And one last quick thing, apologies again for the lighting, is that typically when you boot up the FM3, it will default to a certain foot switch layout. So the one that we programmed, I think it was in layout 4, to get to that, it's really easy. You just turn this knob, so knob E, you turn that along until it goes to layout 4, which is the looper layout that we set up.
So there you go. I hope that was useful. I realize you probably have some kind of separate looper pedal to do this kind of thing. But I know if you've got an FM3, you don't have a looper pedal and you just want something to do, say a loop, run through an amp, for example, and get different tones and try different things out, you can use the FM3 to do that. In any case, thanks a lot for watching. Hope to see you in the next video. Take care.